The Battle of Damascus was the final action of the Allied advance on Damascus in Syria during the Syria-Lebanon campaign in World War II. Background: on 8 June 1941, troops of the 5th Indian Infantry Brigade Group had crossed the Syrian border from the British Mandate of Palestine to take Quneitra and Daraa, with the objective of opening the way for the forces of the 1st Free French Division to advance along the roads from these towns to Damascus. This was one of 4 attacks planned for the campaign by the Allied commander, General Sir Maitland Wilson. By the 17th of June, this force, named Gent Force after its commander Major General Paul Lee Gentilhomme, was resting and consolidating following hard fighting to gain Kisweh and the hills behind, and was planning a final push to Damascus along the 2 main roads from the south. From Quneitra and Kisweh, Gent Force had been under the temporary command of the commander of the 5th Indian Infantry Brigade, Brigadier Wilfred Lewis Lloyd, since the 12th of June, when Major General Lee Gentilhomme had been wounded. Alarmingly, Quneitra had been recaptured by Vichy forces on the 16th of June. This threatened Lloyd's rear. By the 18th of June, Quneitra was recaptured, but the Vichy forces from Quneitra still posed a potential threat to Gent Force's supply and communication lines. Nevertheless, it was decided that an early thrust to Damascus would force the Vichy commander to withdraw his forces to assist in its defense. Thus the threat to Gent Force's rear was to be relieved. Battle. The plan called for the troops of 5th Indian Brigade to advance northwards from their positions at Artus on the Quneitra to Damascus road across country west of the road towards Mezeh. Mezeh was a large village on a junction with the Beirut to Damascus road, some 3 miles west of Damascus itself. The brigade's supplies, ammunition and the anti-tank element would follow closely behind on the road proper. Meanwhile, the Free French forces would advance along the Kisweh-Damascus road to capture Khadim as a preliminary to entering the Syrian capital, some 4 miles further north. At 20.30 on the 18th of June, the Indian troops set out and skirmished their way north. They reached Mezeh at 4:15. By 5:30, after an hour of fierce hand-to-hand fighting, Mezeh was captured. However, there was a major problem. The equipment and anti-tank guns traveling up the main road had earlier got ahead of the infantry and run into a Vichy roadblock where most of the vehicles were knocked out. Furthermore, the planned advance by the Free French to Khadim had been delayed, allowing the Vichy defenders to concentrate on the Mezeh action, putting intense pressure on the Allied position whilst thwarting any attempt to relieve them and bring in vitally needed anti-tank weapons. On the 19th of June, Major General John Evarts, commander of the British 6th Infantry Division, arrived to relieve Lloyd and take control of the Allied forces east of Merjayoun. With the losses suffered by the Indian Brigade, he requested that the British 16th Infantry Brigade be detached from the 7th Australian Division and sent to his sector. By nightfall on the 19th of June, the Allied position at Mezeh was desperate. Ammunition was running low, no food had been eaten for 24 hours, casualties were severe, and medical supplies were exhausted. During the night, 3 men managed to reach Gent Force headquarters with the news of the position in Mezeh. Early on the 20th of June, Brigadier Lloyd, having handed over to Evarts, resumed command of the 5th Indian Brigade and sent a force comprising 2 companies from the 3/1 of a Stone Punjab regiment, 2 companies of French Marines and a battery of artillery to fight its way through to Mezeh. But they could not blast a way through, and they progressed only slowly against determined opposition from French tanks. A Free French attack on Khadim the previous night had failed expensively, so that they were unable to exert pressure on Khadim that morning to draw Vichy forces away from Mezeh. That night, however, the Free French, with support from British anti-tank and anti-aircraft guns and an Australian machine gun battalion, advanced against light Vichy defences and captured Khadim on the morning of the 21st of June. Through the night of 19-20 June, the Indian defenders at Mezeh had continued to hold out. But by 13.30 on the 20th of June, with ammunition exhausted and having had no rations for 50 hours, they were being shelled at point-blank range. A decision was made to ask for a truce to evacuate the wounded, to try to buy time for the relieving column to reach them. However, the white flag was misread as a signal of surrender by the Vichy forces, who rushed the positions of the remaining bayonet-wielding defenders and overpowered them. The relieving column, reinforced by a battalion of Australian infantry, recaptured Mézé at 19.00 that evening to find it empty save for the dead. By noon on the 21st of June, the Allied forces were in Damascus and the Vichy forces were retreating west along the Beirut Road. Aftermath. On the 21st of June 1941, with the fall of Damascus, Gent Force accomplished its primary goal.